Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Steve DiGiorgio from Testament, and you are now listening to Jet on Metal Messiah Radio.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Metal Magdalene with Jet right here on Metal Messiah Radio. Tonight we have a legend bassist from bands Sadus, Death, Testament, and many more, Mr. Steve DiGiorgio. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Well, it's awesome to be here. Thank you for the warm welcome.
So, Steve, like I had mentioned in a little opening there, you have like an extensive career with many iconic metal bands. At what age did you start playing bass, and was bass the first instrument that you learned?
What age? I don't remember exactly. It was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So probably 14, 15. Because I remember strapping a little practice amp to my back with some belts and carrying my case up the road to my friend John's house to practice. So we didn't have our driver's licenses yet. So that's how I know it was before the age of 16. And no, bass was not the first instrument I played. It's actually the last in a long line. When I was a little kid in school, I was always signed up for band class, and I started as a little tyke on piano, just doing the basic one finger, Jingle Bells or Mary Had a Little Lamb, whatever. And then that was good enough to teach me to sight read at a certain level. So I got to play a little bit of clarinet and then bass clarinet. And then I kind of graduated over to brass and played tuba, big old tuba. And then I was playing bass trombone and jazz band, and then there was an opening in the orchestra class for the upright or string bass, where double bass has a lot of names, but it's the big boy. And from there, the other bass player in the class brought in his, I was probably a Fender or something back then, and he let me try his electric bass, and from that moment on, I figured, okay, well, I'm going to be Geddy Lee or Chris Squire or either Butler, and and I never, and then once I got out of high school, I didn't have access to all those other instruments. So they were just kind of like, it was just it was a class to have going through school that was always kind of an easy grade because we just played all the little songs and stuff. But when I picked up electric bass, that's when I started learning songs from albums like everyone usually does in the beginning. And so I would say I'm a kind of hybrid. I was fundamentally trained as a kid, but when I picked up the electric bass, I had musical training, but on bass it was new, and I taught myself to be a rocker or a metalhead or whatever from albums, learning by ear like that. So kind of a weird mixture of everything. So I have kind of a musical childhood in a way that carried through, and but it's ever since about driver's license time, it's just been all bass guitar.
So, Steve, when you first picked up the electric bass, did you start paying more attention to the bass lines and songs after that?
No, because I was already doing that. I was already a fan, because a lot of the instruments that I mentioned I went through were all the lower end of those kind of families. Like I played the bass trombone of the trombone line. I played the tuba, which is the big bass instrument. I played the bass clarinet. So I was always kind of inclined to be in that low support kind of thing. And so that's when I would turn on music, that's kind of where my ear always tuned into that kind of bouncy, low end, growing up in the 70s, all the music on the radio, there was a little disco and the bass was interesting in that, but anything from America to Elton John to, Doobie Brothers, all the stuff that's going around then, the bass was very prominent and very interesting, and I always gravitated towards that. I think it just something I liked. I was never into the upper range. I wasn't into fast soloing. I was just part of the breed that needed to come up and support. I wasn't a spotlight hungry guy. I was a backline low end dweller.
Now most of the metal listening community first were exposed to you, through your bands like Sadus and Death. So tell us about your early metal days and what it was like being in Sadus back in the day.
Yeah, I guess on average I was a little late to come around to the heavier music. I was listening to more of the, I don't know what it would be like. I guess the word proggy is getting kind of worn out, so I don't know if it applies, but it was like, when people were cranking Kiss and Nazareth and stuff, I was kind of listening to Queen. And then when people were doing Sabbath and Priest, maybe I was doing Jethro Tull and Yes. So it was in the neighborhood, but I was listening to a little bit more intricate, busier stuff instead of the hard, slamming stuff. But eventually it all kind of came together. We melded together, and, high school, after school bands, you put together a list of stuff to play, and we started learning Priest and Maiden, Accept and Sabbath, and, even a little bit later than the early days, but still high school time, like when we started learning cool stuff like Merciful Fate and, the heavier, even Slayer, stuff like that. It just really warmed me up to that style of music because it was so fun to play. It was way more involved. It was way more physical. It was fast, and then you had to dig in, and that's what I was inclined to do. I didn't want to sit back in an easy chair and just play, soft notes. So I guess even though I was late to come around, it was eventually going to happen because that's just my inclination and my attitude, my personality brought me into that, and kind of I just assimilated and melded into that crew, and immediately everyone starts breaking out their favorite albums and just crash coursed, and I just had all this new music dumped on me, and it was great because a lot of the bands that we were starting to really get into, like Motley Crue was kind of getting worse. Ozzy started wearing sequins, and his songs were a little more commercially. Def Leppard was completely out of there. We're like, no, their first couple albums, all right, but now it was just totally, we were losing a lot of our main thing. So when the underground started coming up, Fast as a Shark and Angel Witch, and they were like, okay, good. Now here's the stuff we like. And we would emulate that and just start learning it. And I don't know. So through that whole kind of process, the different friend groups and discovering bands, we found people that, I was kind of partnered up with the drummer from Sadus, John, and we were going in and out of all these different cover bands. And we had decided we learned everything. We were like, we could play any Maiden song, Sabbath, whatever. And we decided, like, hey, let's find someone that makes their own songs, And so we were playing at a party one night with some mutual friends, and they brought these two long-haired dudes up. They said, hey, we want you to meet these two guitar players. And they said, yeah, you guys sound good, and we know all these songs and everything, but we don't want to sit around and waste our time learning other people's songs. We both write our own songs, and we both sing. And me and John looked at each other and went, I think we found our guys. And that turned out to be Sadus. So from our very first jam in the drummer's bedroom, we wrote a song that day. And then we went, hey, that was cool. Let's do it tomorrow. And the next day we wrote song 2, and we kept going like that. And it was just like, all right, this is our future. And we never did the cover band thing again because Sadus, it was a high school after school project, but we stuck to it, man, for 25 years.
Like, what kind of shows were you playing with Sadus?
Oh, we were playing people's backyards. One of our friends had a cool backyard deck, and the yard that went beyond it was perfect, like a long rectangle shot. So it was in our imagination, it was a stage with a huge field. We were playing outdoor festivals, and we would pass flyers around. We had a little crew around us, a little satellite group of friends, and one of them was an artist. One of them had a van. One of them could buy booze. I mean, we had everything we needed. We had a whole army intact, and we would make these flyers, and we'd pass them around school and say, hey, 3 kegs, and we put the address, which was so stupid because about the third or fourth time we did that, the cops got a hold of one and shut us down. But we were playing like backyard keggers, living room keggers. The guy who eventually became our manager ran his dad's bowling alley, not a really large bowling alley, so it was kind of a little bit out of the way, and had a nice big bar, and had a pinball room, and it had a stock room upstairs where we did all the bad boy stuff. And we would get a hold of this bowling alley and put some boards across the lanes and set up a little makeshift stage and a place for everybody to thrash. And we were playing with Autopsy and Hex and Sacrilege, the Bloodbath. The local bands of the Bay Area back then just had this whole bowling alley to ourselves with, nothing was locked up. We had booze and everything, man. And so it was a cool thing to do for people because whether they liked our music or not, they knew that there was a lot going on. It was a chance to get hammered. There was a chance to get in a fight, and maybe even to be like 2 or 3 chicks there, and it was awesome. So yeah, we were kind of we had like I said, we had an army, we had everything we needed. So it seemed like we had a good head of steam. We had a lot of luck, and we translated that into, getting involved in the demo, trading, the underground, which put us in fanzines, which got us more attention than our audience went from beyond bowling alleys to other cities and, oh my God, other countries. We had to learn how to write addresses with strange countries on it. Back then there was West Germany and crap like that. And that eventually got us up into the realm of being a legitimate band with a legitimate fan base. And we scored a deal with Roadrunner and started doing our albums and, got on some good tours and thus was born Sadus.
So what was it like for you to get like your first big tour?
It was weird. We didn't have to, even though we were on average a little bit, it took us a little longer to get around to making the demos, and we were kind of naive. We learned from other bands, but even though we paid those kind of dues, once we signed with Roadrunner and put out that record with them, instantly we got on a big tour. So our very first tour, we're in a tour bus. We didn't do the old, we had to do a station wagon, and then one day we worked up to a van, and then one day an RV. No, we went right to a tour bus, and the band we shared the bus with was Obituary, who had a couple tours experience behind them. So on average, they were about a year or 2 younger than us, but we looked up to them as our big brother band because they treated us awesome. We didn't have the welcome to the scene, hazing, initiation thing. We had hey, we're from Florida and we love you guys. Let's get high. And so, Obituary became our instant best friend. They showed us all the ropes. They showed us how they set their practice room up. They showed us how to live life on a bus. They showed us how to deal with gigs and fans. And we had a really good time. And we were both supporting Sepultura on their second Beneath the Remains run. And so the turnouts were great. We had really big shows back then, and coming home from that, immediately we got thrown over to Europe supporting Morbid Angel. And so, yeah, for Sadus to start touring was just like immediately, with the big boys.
And now, what's going on with Sadus now?
Nothing.
Is there anything going to go on with Sadus?
Maybe.
Okay.
I really don't know. I mean, we did our first 3 albums about every 2 years, and it felt like a rhythm. Mm-hmm. 88, boom. 90, boom. 92, boom. But then after our tour in 92, Roadrunner had cleaned house, and we were one of the bands that got kicked out. And then around that time, we went from a 4-piece to a 3-piece because one of our guitar players, whatever, details don't matter. We downsized. And it was a period of time where we were kind of trying a little bit different song style and shopping a tape around and trying to kind of pick up where we were. But if you were around in any time in that early to mid 90s, you realize that metal in general was a little bit of an afterthought. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it was born in the early 80s and died in the early 90s, and it wasn't until the late 90s that it woke up again. So that's real reflective of the history of our band as well. So we're off-road runner, we lose a guy, and we had just kind of went on a long break, and we stayed friends, and we always stayed in contact, but everybody had a life, a job, a kid, or something. So we were busy with stuff, and new song ideas started coming slowly. And so finally we got the attention of a label in Europe called Mascot, and we were able to pull it together and do our fourth album. I believe it came out in 97. Yeah, so from 92 to 97 was a break from having a good 2-year pattern of albums coming out. So it felt weird, but we were back at it, and we did good round of supporting shows when the album came out, and everything felt kind of back to normal. But for whatever reason, probably me joining Testament was a big deal, but for whatever reason, we went back on a break, and this break went all the way until about 2004. So then all of a sudden, that 5-year break, we were kind of cringing about. The next one turned out to be 8 or 9 year break. So whatever, we were just like, okay, well, this is our new pattern. And so we did that album there. It was done in 2005, but the record label held it over the holidays and put it out early 2006. But to us, it's an 05 record. And we did, once again, a nice round of supporting shows, European tour. Finally got on a couple of metal festivals in 2008 or 9. But coming home from that, even though there was talk of new songs and a new album and keeping it going, we went into break mode again, which we appear to be very good at. and now here we are in 18, so it's been 9 years, and we're just kind of in that I don't know period. Like, there's moments where I hear somebody talking about all these new song ideas, and then 6 months later, it's like, oh yeah, what happened to those new song ideas? So I don't know. It could happen because we're notoriously good at taking breaks and coming back from them. But maybe at this age and this time, I don't know. It's what is a little different now is we've always lived really close in proximity to each other, and now we're very spread out. The drummer took off. He was living in Texas for a while, but I think he's actually moving to New Jersey. Darren, the guitar player singer, he lives fairly close to me, just one town over. But I don't know. It's hard to say. I would hate to give it a definite no,
right,
just in case something does come up. But if I say definitely yeah, people will wait and maybe wait for nothing. So
we'll just leave it at maybe.
I'm gonna plead the 5.5 and then just say I don't know.
Well, it's not like you haven't been busy in between all those breaks and everything. Tell us a little bit about Death, meeting up with Chuck, and what that whole experience was like for you.
Yeah, that was back in our demo days when we were young. We finally made a nice cassette and had it, labels printed, and made it a really nice looking cassette. It wasn't just some Memorex. And on the label, that had all the song info, band info, blah, blah, blah. There was a little phone number said for booking, and it was Darren's, the guitar player singer, was his home phone number. So one day we were sitting around after practice, relaxing, phone ring. The guys go, "Hey, we got your tape. Really like it. Sounds great." We're like, "Right on." He goes, "Yeah, we're from," I can say the name of the town, but they were just a couple towns over, and we're in a band called Death. We were kind of like, "Wow, that's nice. Cool name." And they're like, "So we like your tape, and we think you'd like our music, and I don't know, do you want to hang out, grab a 12-pack or something?" It's like, "Sure, let's go meet these guys in Death." Well, it was awesome. There was 2 of them. One guy played guitar and sang, one guy played drums. The guy who played drums was about 10th or 11th grade or something. So we waited for him to get out of school, and they set up, and it sounded like 5 people playing. We were like, holy shit, they're powerful. And we got to know them really good. We got along real good, both bands, which was 4 guys in one band and 2 in the other. But we started going out and making a ritual of, getting a couple 12-packs, going to a park or a school grounds at night, where we can get away from the lights of real life, and we just would do what young guys do. We don't really own your own pad, you still live with your parents and stuff, and we just hung out and talked about music and everything, and in this conversation we found out that the drummer for Death had a brand new Thomas set, huge, nice Thomas set, and our drummer for Sadus had kind of a put together, I wouldn't say a piece of crap, but it definitely looked like he was finding a piece here and a piece there and made it work for him. And he was like, man, I'd love to play that kit. That looks awesome. I never played it. It seems so cool. And Chris was like, dude, you could totally play my kit. Just come over. And he goes, yeah, but I don't have a car. I can't get over to where you live. He goes, why don't you bring your kit over and put it in the Sadus room? He goes, I'd love to. Can we do that? I'm like, yeah, you guys set up in our room. We got a killer practice room, so if you guys leave your drums there for our drummer, you could use our room. And so they're cool. The deal was struck. And Sadus drummer got to play the big Death drum kit, and they got to use this cool practice room and not bother anybody. And, well, it was kind of trippy. They would watch us, 4-piece band, and then we would turn off, and they would turn on, and all of a sudden there's 2 guys. So I just kind of grabbed my bass, watched Chuck's hand a little bit, copied some riffs, joined in, and they were giving me the nod, like, yeah, this is cool. So that turned into Steve playing bass in both bands for practice, which turned into grand ideas under a big hooger one night, like, hey, let's do a show. Let's go out and do a show. Let's book a few shows, Fuck all these Bay Area bands. Their pants go into their shoes. They look funny, man. Let's just go up there and scream like we do, And they're like, all right. So we go, wow, we need somebody really good. Let's pull in somebody to headline this batch of shows and make, give us a chance to play for more people and stuff. All right. So we got a whole, we all love the Dark Angel album. We called them down in LA. Oh, we'd love to go up there and play. So we set it up. Dark Angel, Death, Sadus. We were ready to go. Well, Chuck went to Florida to visit his mom or his girlfriend or something, and he never came back. So I think the shows went on somehow. We changed the lineup or whatever. I don't remember what happened with any of that, but it was kind of the end of Death's brief California residency, and he went on to get a new lineup to make the Leprosy album after that. But that's how I got to know him, just from the big Sadus Death conglomeration party family, and then learning the songs and slowly becoming a kind of temporary member in the group, and then poof, it was gone. And then a couple of years later he calls me when he fired his lineup for a second time and said, got these guys from Miami, why don't you join in? And we made Human album, and after that it just built up and up, and we became way more closer. It was more than just 12-pack. Now we're in the studio with big record budgets, doing it for real. So that's kind of a long-winded version, but there you go.
But you went on to work with him even after Death in Control Denied as well. So, you kind of were up with him till the end, basically.
Yeah, so the whole story of how we met as teenagers and and pre-Scream Bloody Gore, and then, like I said, I came back in '90 for Human, came back again for the follow-up album, did all the touring for that, and I even was still in, like, when Individual Thought Patterns tours were over, we took a break, and then we all met again with a new batch of songs. Gene stayed on, I stayed on. It was pretty much the same lineup. And so I was there at his house during the writing and composing phase, and we're doing these, practice run-through recordings. I guess it's called pre-production, that type of thing, for whatever cassette and, little boombox type. I guess it was a type of pre-production, but it was equivalent. And so I was part of all that. And I think Roadrunner reissued the album, and they put some of those demo tracks in to kind of back up my story that I'm not a fibber. But I was there, but I don't know how to put it the right way. I just didn't follow through. Me and Chuck didn't agree on something, and I didn't follow through and go into the studio to do the album, so you don't see me on there. But they went ahead and finished the album, did the touring cycle, and then Chuck scrapped everything and wanted to start Control Denied. And the record company that was interested said, we'll get behind this new project of yours, but to guarantee we get something, we want another Death record. So he told the Control Denied guys, hey, our project's on hold. But he kept the guys and just turned them into the Death lineup. And the bass player wasn't having any of that, so he calls me back. So once again, I'm going to Florida, doing pre-production with Shannon and Richard, and I'm back in, and we're gonna do this. Oh boy, that last album didn't work out. Oh well, we'll fix it this time. Guess what? I don't have the time. I didn't follow through and do the next record either, but I was part of all the writing process. So here I am, like his little workhorse, and I failed to be on 2 consecutive albums more. And the bass player comes back, and they finish the album, the touring cycle. And then he's so pissed at him, kicks him out of the band, calls me, and says, I don't care. All that stuff before, whatever happened, I don't care anymore. I'm sick now, and I need you here. Come do this Control Denied record. So boom, I go out there, we do it. I actually appeared on the album this time. And it was great, but he was going through too much treatment, so we didn't ever get to get around and do any kind of live shows or tours or anything for that. And there was a point where it seemed like he was crawling out of it a little bit and maybe getting better, and so he started writing new songs. And we had these plans to do the second Control Denied album. We're talking about it, making plans, and maybe talking about booking a flight and all this. And then he says, oh, hold off a little bit. I'm going to this new treatment. Something else came up. I'm not doing too good. And from then it was a quick downhill, and then he was gone. So part of the album was worked on, and once again, I didn't appear on that album because there is none. But yeah, it's true. So from being 17-year-old guys, working on Scream Bloody Gore to all the way being in his last lineup that he left, I guess I have this kind of long span. I guess you would call it in and out of the lineup. But, I mean, me and Chuck maintained a good communication line, and we pretty much friends throughout all those years.
So, Steve, when did you discover the joys of the fretless bass, and why do you like them so much?
Well, I get asked this question a lot, so I guess I get kind of used to prefacing my answer saying it's not such a really different thing. It's a little bit different, but it's not a big deal. And if you remember when I was talking about my journey through school band classes, that I played upright bass in orchestra, and if you can picture a stand-up bass and a cello and a violin, those are all completely fretless stringed instruments. So to me, switching to it was, for lack of a better definition, it was pretty natural. I was kind of already trained on it. I was used to it. Wasn't afraid of it. I learned to play on a stringed instrument lacking frets way before I picked up one with frets. It just wasn't electric, was the only difference. But it wasn't that big of a deal. I kind of built my first one out of Fender parts, and it was probably in the late 80s. The first real album in metal that I played it on was Autopsy's Fiend for Blood. That's the official first fretless and extreme metal. And then I used it on a few of the songs of Sadus' third record called Vision of Misery. But the one that everyone knows was my third studio trip with that bass, which was Individual Thought Patterns in 93. So that's kind of like the beginning for some people. Like, that's the first time I heard it. But, like I said, I'd been sneaking it in a few years prior into metal, but I was still kind of a jazz nerd, and I was playing in different fusion combos for fun. Like, when the Sadus guys were, cruising around listening to, Kill 'Em All or whatever, I would go over and find a sax player and a cool little drummer, and we'd do some fusion jams and stuff. So it was, and that's kind of, in that world, in fusion or jazz, I mean, fretless bass is very prevalent. It goes way back.
Right.
So to me, from my point of view, wasn't like something really new, wasn't really something really strange, but I get the feedback of people that were exposed to it for the first time in extreme metal, and I'm credited as being the first and this and that, and in a way I guess I am, but I don't celebrate that recognition because, like I said, where I'm from, my journey that led me to that, it wasn't like some great invention I came up with or something.
Right, but it's like you said, for the extreme metal world or the metal world in general, it wasn't something that we were used to seeing or hearing back when you started introducing it. So for you, it's like, I've been doing this forever. For everybody else, it was like, what the hell is that thing, But it kind of makes...
It was coming around eventually because there are so many fretless bass players in metal now, and it was going to come around eventually. So the only thing I really benefit was being born before them and just being an old guy. That's all it really is. I'm old, and so I got to think of something before someone, but it's not like that's about it.
So Steve, throughout your career, you worked with our friend Ralph Santolla on a few projects. Now, other than touring with Death, tell us about working with Ralph all the way up to his Devil's Highway.
Ralphie boy. So he hangs out at the studio in Tampa there, and he kind of glommed his way into the Death touring lineup. And that's when we got to know each other. And we got on pretty good. He was rough. He had a pretty, I don't know how to say it in a little less harsh, but let's face it, he had a pretty big head about himself. He was kind of a local, I don't want to say hero, but he was winning, like in the Tampa area. They had a publication called Jam magazine. So when you had a competition and you won an award from them, it was called a Jammy, like a Grammy, but it was a Jammy. And Ralph was winning these guitar player of Tampa Bay type things. So he had this kind of build up locally. But he was playing a little bit different kind of metal than Death. He wasn't really used to the extreme stuff. In fact, his first comment was, why are the bass and drums playing so crazy during the guitar solo? It should be opposite. They should lay back and let the guitar do its thing. And Chuck looked at him. He's all, all right. So he learned his lesson quickly on tour, who Mr. Steve and Mr. Gene were. So it was cool to watch him. I say I was late to metal, but we're talking, by months back in teenage days. Ralph was really late to metal. He used to flip his hair way to the side, if you know what I mean. So we got to know each other on the Death tour. We didn't really do much after that. We kind of saw each other passing through here and there, but it wasn't until I was in the studio recording Control Denied that he was hanging around that we kind of picked up after so many years and said, hey, we should do something. And, talk is talk, whatever, but we musically it wasn't too much, but we improved our personal communication and stuff like this. And Ralph was going on his own little journey, going through different bands. And in 2001, I got an opportunity to play with Iced Earth. It was very short-lived, but I got to know the guys. And out of so many bands and so many musicians I've worked with, it's pretty safe to say that pretty much all of them I can still call friends. I got called back repeat times on some of these projects, and pretty much everything was a completely positive experience, except Iced Earth. Didn't work out that well. So I'm out of the lineup. They move on to their next record, and Ralph gets in the band. So Ralph's in Iced Earth, and we're doing a festival in Germany, and Iced Earth is a headliner. Ralph's in the band. Testament is a support band. I'm in that band. And the band played before us, which none of us could figure out how this got on the bill, was the ex-lead singer from Skid Row. So here's Sebastian Bach playing before Testament and Iced Earth in a big German metal festival. And it was kind of funny because, you know, like I said earlier, we came from a real heavy underground, and Skid Row was never any of our thing. It was,
Right.
it was a little bit silly, but whatever. You know, let him get his set done, and we'll go up there and do our thing. And so I'm sitting in the catering area, and a bunch of people around, band members, crew members, everybody's around, and I was sitting next to Paul Bostaff. He was in Testament at the time. This guy comes up and he goes, "Hey, I'm working with Bach right now, and you know his main guitar player is leaving. So Paul, if you know any guitar players, just send them over to the dressing room. You know, because Sebastian needs somebody. There's some shows like in 2 weeks or something. We need somebody. So just help him put the word out there." And of course, me, devilish little smile, rubbing hands together, like, "Ooh, this is good." So I told Ralph, "Hey, Ralph," and it was a total like joke. Like, "Ralph, Sebastian Bach needs a guitar player. Why don't you go over there and try out?" And I thought I'd get the finger or the, you know, some snarky thing that me and Ralph had between us. So he freaking goes over to the dressing room. You know, I'm out of there. I did Testament. We did our set. Went back to the hotel. Got our shit. Flew home. I didn't know if he followed through or not. So I'm at home about a week later. He calls me. "Hey, dude, thanks for the recommendation, man. I went over and talked to Sebastian. I got the gig." And I was like, "You did? You really did? You went for it?" And he goes, "Yeah, he's super cool, man. And in fact, he's so cool that he put me kind of in charge of a lot of stuff. Like, I'm going to write a bunch of tunes, and I'm going to pull in, you know, musicians and fix the lineup and make this new thing for him and stuff." And I said, "Oh, good for you. Have fun with it." And he goes, "Yeah, but that's the other part of my call. You're my bass player." And I was like, "No fucking way." And I'm glad I stopped short of saying anything too rude, because apparently it was either a speaker call or Sebastian had the other line, so he's listening, you know, and so I luckily didn't spout out anything normally that goes on between me. And it's like, "Dude, cool, man. My son's into death, and you're awesome. Be my band." And so I was like, "Well, fucking why not? If Ralph's there, that's my lifeline, you know. We'll see how it works out." Well, I'm only saying all this stuff because I was totally wrong. I did it, and it was awesome, and Sebastian's fucking cool. I still, to this day, call him a friend, and I had fun. I stayed with Sebastian for 2 years. I helped him write his first solo record, and it was cool, man. I was never so glad to be wrong about a prejudice ever, because it was super cool. He treated me great. The shows were awesome. The music was cool. It was nothing like first Skid Row album. We played a lot of the big Skid Row songs for the crowds and stuff, and it wasn't that big of a deal. And it actually matured me, because I learned that, you know, you're supposed to like what you do. That's how you do it well. But, you know, when you're a performer, you're doing it for the people out there. And when I watched them enjoy that stuff, I said, you know, this is what I'm here for. This is great. So it was cool. It was a growing up moment for me. So yeah, it was awesome. And so here is me and Ralph on tour again. You know, we toured in '93 with Death, and we waited all the way 11 years later to work for Sebastian Bach, of all people. And here we are touring again, and we just made the most of it. And we were kids again, man. It was fun, because Ralph was a character. We loved all sorts of humor and fuckery, and we had a great time. It was cool. Ralph didn't stay around as long as I did, but I kept in touch. And then fast forward a few years later, an opportunity comes up, and he throws a lineup together, and we go to Japan in kind of a, you know, that band Metal Allegiance, how they kind of,
Sure.
They're all like guys from other bands, and they get together and they do a bunch of covers of all the bands that they're in. Well, we did that in a death metal way. We had Jack Owen from Cannibal and Deicide. We had Tony Laureano. We had Kyle Thomas from Exhorder, and me and Ralph. And we just went to Japan and did this just really temporary thing where we just played all those songs. Played Deicide, Death, Obituary, all the bands we were all in. We played those songs. And it was great, and it was fun again, you know, and we were like, well, instead of just going home and, you know, considering this a memory, what do you guys say we stay together? Let's just, you know, nothing serious,
Right.
nothing that takes away from what we're all doing, but let's keep this camaraderie of the five of us, make an album, and just put it out. And maybe one day we'll convene and tour and go have fun again. I said, sure. So the songs started coming. And, of course, you know, when you're working on something, you got to think of a name for it. And so after some deliberation and a lot of bad ideas, it settled on Devil's Highway. And that's how that was born. And that's taken, I think that tour was in 2008 or 9, probably 2008. And so here we are, and the songs have been going through the ringer for the decade, and Ralph worked his ass on recording, re-recording, rewriting, re-recording, and just trying to get them just right. And finally, he was up in the studio with Max Norman. They got Kyle's parts done, and they're getting close. And, you know, we're close to getting everybody's parts finished. And, well, that was the end of Ralph's days, and he's got this album sitting there really close to being done. So whenever I see the guys, mostly Kyle, because Kyle was close to him during a lot of the completion of the recording, and he just said, hey, what do you think? Should we finish it? Do we carry it through and do it for our buddy? And I said, yeah, why not? It's what we do, you know? So the plan right now is to pick up and continue on and release it and raise a glass and say, here you go, Ralph, we actually did it for you.
Looking forward to that, too.
Yeah.
Now, you were teamed up again with fellow Death member Richard Christie and Charred Walls of the Damned. So tell us a little bit about how that all came about for you, Steve.
Well, fortunately, this is not a long-winded story because it's as simple as Richard just saying, you know, hey, Stevie D, I got this project signed to Metal Blade. You want to play bass on it? I said, of course, Richie, you're my friend. So I flew to Florida, did it, and we thought, yeah, that was fun. Cool. No shows, no nothing. Steely Dan of metal. And Metal Blade wants another one. We're like, holy crap. When has a metal band ever done an album with absolutely no live support and gotten a budget for a second album? So come on over. So a couple of years later, we did the same thing over again. The songs improved a little. Richard got better with writing and turned out pretty damn good. Put it out. No shows. Sales are pretty good. Internet plays pretty good. Boom. Hey, they want a third record. So we're like, I don't know. Richard's just a good luck charm. He has an effect on people. He's exactly that. He's a good luck charm. And so they gave us a budget for a third album. And that was, I want to say it was fairly recently, but I guess it's already been a couple of years. But, yeah, no live shows, no support, but just a chance to get in the studio. And, you know, it's mostly Richard's baby. Well, in fact, it's entirely. He writes all the songs, he writes the lyrics, and he's got his close friends. You know, he was real close buddies with Jason for years, and he was in Ice Dirt at the same time with Tim, so they're close. And then obviously me and him from Death and Control Denied. And so it's just a project he does with his close buddies for songs that are in his head, and just puts it out for fun. And instead of sitting around rotting and no one knowing about it, I guess it gets some good response, gets some good airplay. And who knows? I don't know if there'll be a fourth album because we never even thought there would be a second.
That's kind of interesting. No shows, just calls you up, you go, record it. Mm-hmm. Wait a couple years, call you up again.
Exactly. That's all it is. It's simple as that. That's all it is. So it's cool as hell. It's cool as hell. There's no pressure.
You don't have to just show up, have a good time.
No, and Richard's such a good-natured guy. He's just like, you know, it's not exactly play whatever you want, but it's like, hey, I brought you here for a reason. You know, make it cool. And so just playing to Richard's compositions and finish it up. And, you know, it's in good hands. Jason that plays guitar on it also runs his studio down in Florida there, and he's had quite a lot of the clientele that has gone through his studio is pretty amazing. He's definitely known for being this amazing knob turner, you know, producer guy, but man, he's a shredding guitar player too. So Richard, got the best of both worlds. His shredding guitar player is tracking the whole album and mixing it too. So it's pretty easy. It's a really, really easy, no stress project, and Metal Blade is happy to carry that product. It fits their kind of style, and you get names on it like Richard Christie, Ripper Owens, and stuff like that, and people are like, ooh, let's check this out.
So tell us now, of course, about Testament and how you got that gig and how life has been with Testament, Steve.
Yeah, the big Testaments. This is my second stint, my second go around with them. They were in need of a bass player back in 1998. I was referred to them by Eric's cousin, who helped start the band with him. Eric and his cousin Derek were the original two guitar players of Legacy. So Derek briefly played bass during the Demonic chapter for them. And so when he was done, he just said, yeah, why don't you get Steve? He's good. So I was currently working on James Murphy's second solo album, and James Murphy was coincidentally coming back for his second stint for the album, which would eventually be called The Gathering. And so with Derek's recommendation and being around James and knowing James for so many years and stuff, I just had the door was open for me at that point. And it was really just Eric Peterson and Dave Lombardo in a practice room with a boombox, just playing riffs. And he just goes, yeah, we need a bass player. What do you think? And I said, you're going to play me riffs that sound like Slayer with a band called Testament and ask me if I want to be in there? I mean, where do I sign? I mean, when people say it was a no-brainer, I mean, I was kind of like, let me think about it. Okay. It was an easy deal. And so I came in, and fortunately I was in for quite a few months while the songs were growing, and got to be, kind of ease my way in by, working in the rehearsal room with Dave and Eric, and then slowly James and Chuck came in. And when the album was done, we all agreed to do the very first run with that lineup. Dave didn't really intend on staying around, so it was expected that he was on his way out. But when the same time Dave left, James had to go. So so we got a couple new guys, but so that was 98, and I stuck around. We did massive touring, and we even did an album that's kind of a remake of a lot of their old songs. That one was called First Strike Still Deadly, had John Tempesta on drums.
Wow.
And Alex Skolnick was back at that point. And so I stayed in all the way until they got the offer to do their big reunion, when they got the original Greg and Louie came back. They were going to do this, the band reunited. We're going to go do like 1 or 3 shows or something, and turn into years and years and years. But somewhere along the way, I was getting calls from Chuck saying that Greg was no longer Greg was no longer. And so they wanted me back, and that was in late 13. And then, so it's December now. So I've been back another 5 years. So 6 prior, 9-year break, and back again 5.
So how's it going this time around, Steve?
Well, the first thing I noticed coming back to the band was how much progress and how bigger everything was. The band even acted more professional. They had an actual account, and they had people, they always had like a manager and a booking agent, but now there was more people. There was this real serious account. Everything was even more legit, more on the up and up. It was a business. It was a machine, and the production was bigger. In the old days, we go on stage just like any band. We'd set up our drums, our amps, throw up a backdrop, and we were good to go. I come back, and we got it. There was temporary stage stairs going up to the drum riser, and all these different, it felt in a way like Iron Maiden Jr. I was looking around like, wow, this is production. And the crew was big, and I was like, this is cool. This is like a real, this is like a real band, man. And so, yeah, it felt better. They really had a lot of success when I was gone, and they turned that into their favor and built up the machine. And we recorded the album in 16. Gosh, it's been 2 years already. It still feels new. But the album, in some regards, I'm not comparing it to the very first batch of there's 3 albums that were just an arm's reach from catching Metallica at that point in time. Not the classic Testament that was played on FM radio, but pretty much everything after that. It seemed like this new album kind of exceeded all that. It charted up to number 20, I think, on Billboard, and not one of those alternative Billboard charts like heavy or extreme no, the main Billboard chart went up to 20, and in some countries was number 1. Like I remember the amplifiers I used were made in Sweden, and the guy from the company calls, hey, this is how I found out. He's all, hey, congratulations, you guys have the number 1 album. And it came out the same time as Metallica's, who was number 2 or 3, and Opeth, from Sweden's Pride and Joy, they were down at number 3, and he was just like, you guys beat Metallica and Opeth, congratulations, it's a great album. A couple other countries here and there were 1 or 2. That was amazing for 50-year-old guys, that have been doing it for 30 years to come out with a thrash album that's charting so high. And it just kind of kept everything, it just maintained the level that they had going. I mean, we haven't, we know the inevitables around the corner. We're all aging. The scene is aging, and you can't keep writing, a trillion thrash records. But for now, what's not happening, it's all good. So we're just kind of enjoying it, and we're trying to keep the momentum going. People are always meeting us at the shows. We do a lot of meet and greets, a lot of, autograph sessions, and keeping in touch with the fans, and they're letting us know. And they dig it, they're into it, and it's a great feeling. I'm not going to let them down.
And Steve, besides Testament, what else are you currently working on?
Oh, gosh. I'm a busy guy. If I went down the list, it would probably put everybody to sleep. But
a few of the things you're working on.
Yeah. Well, there's an album coming out under Frontiers Records out of Italy. Once again, reunited with Mr. Ripper Owens, and we have Chris Caffery from Sabotage, TSO, and also the early drummer from Fates Warning. It's Mark Zonder from everyone. Most people know him from Fates Warning, and Frontiers threw this lineup together. They're like, we do this all the time. We handpick musicians, put them together. They write their own stuff. We put it out. Sometimes it goes down the toilet. Sometimes it's so damn good that the musicians stay together and move on to another album and maybe a permanent band and stuff. So this was kind of like their American project. Picking us 4 guys, and that is called Spirits of Fire. It's coming out in February. It's pretty straight up metal. Like their directive was like, look, we picked these guys because we want kind of a mixture of Judas Priest, Sabotage. Obviously, get together, write your own stuff, but you pick the guitar player from Sabotage and the singer from the 2 Priest records. It was pretty obvious why they wanted that. And now that it's done, I would say, yeah, pretty much on the Priest. Sabotage, not so much, but it's a pretty good straightforward, metal. It's got Ripper doing his Ripper thing, and it's cool. It's really cool. It was fun to do that. That's a noteworthy project. I've been doing a lot of underground, obscure, and all great music, and I love staying involved as a session guy, meeting so many different musicians, interpreting people's take on music, and just basically keeping busy and doing what I like to do. And there's so much stuff coming out. I did a project from a guitar player from Argentina. Now nobody's going to know the guy from Argentina. They're not going to really know the band name. They do have one album out. The band is called Geoda. Like Earth type rock. I think it's the kind of rock that it looks like a boring rock. You cut it in the middle, it's all crystalline inside, like a geode. So maybe Geoda is the Spanish version, I guess. So, yeah, no one's really going to know this, but it does have DIRK VERBEUREN. He's currently the drummer of Megadeth.
Mm-hmm.
He played on that too. So there's little cool projects like this that maybe don't break out of the water so much, but man, they're fun to do. There's a lot of good music out there and stuff. So I keep busy. I keep my antenna up. I keep my irons in the fire. I'm running out of cliches, but I'm currently, and the reason I kind of keep putting off the time and was hard to nail down a time to talk to you is I'm currently in Knoxville at a studio called Wave Transform, and this is my second time recording with this band. The band's name is Gone in April. We have videos on YouTube, really well done professional videos you could check out. The album's all digital out there. It's really interesting music. So we're working on the band's third record, my second, the band's third. And the way that this came about was the person who runs the studio and kind of oversees everything is a drummer by the name of Yanic Bercier, who I met from doing a record up in Montreal 15 years ago called Quo Vadis. So I was picked out of the blue for them, but the friendship developed then, and now I've made my way over here to Knoxville quite a few times. We've done more projects than the Gone in April. So Yanic's kind of like, we have this cool chemistry together. He's an amazing flying-ass drummer. And you never heard bass drums so fast. And, yeah, so that's what I'm currently doing. In fact, he's probably down there tapping his fingers, waiting for his bass player to get back in his spot and pick up where we left off. But
if people want to... I'll wrap it up then, Steve. So if people want to learn more about what you're doing and follow you, what's the best website they can go to?
Well, if you know how to spell my name, well, obviously you do, but this is, when people say you, they mean anybody in general. So you just basically go to stevedigiorgio.com. I try to keep it updated. Little news section you can click and read full stories, and there's anything. Those are the kind of news breaking things I put on there. But anything really quick or something, I try to keep up with the Facebook and the Twitter and the whatever, all the little stuff that everybody does. So that's all easy to find. In fact, all the links to all those little social medias are all on the home page of SteveDiGiorgio.com. So that's the best way. Stop on by, check out the website, click here, click there, learn what you want. There's music to listen to there. There's information about my gear. There's coupons for a barbecue on sale at No, I'm just kidding.
I was gonna, what the hell is he talking about?
I was just seeing if you were listening.
So Steve, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule, while you're doing your studio work over there, to do this interview with us here tonight, and all the best to you in your career, and happy holidays.
Well, thank you so much for the very insightful questions. I really appreciate all your interest in this sad little poor bass player's life. It was fun going down memory lane with you, and good luck with your show.